Could you please state your name?
Nathaniel Shaffer.
And how are you employed?
Trooper with the Missouri State Highway Patrol.
And how long have you been with the Missouri State Highway Patrol?
Just under 11 years.
And what are your current duties and responsibilities?
I'm a criminal investigator for the Division of Drug and Crime Control.
And how long have you been involved in as a criminal investigator with the Highway Patrol?
Just under 4 years.
And did you become involved in the homicide investigation of Benjamin Renick?
Yes.
And did you take over that case somewhat as the case agent?
I did.
And that was much longer after the murder had already occurred?
Correct.
As part of that, did you review the entire police file?
I did.
And did that file contain social messages and text messaging and phone records of various individuals?
Yes.
Did they include records of Lynlee Renick and Ben Renick?
Yes.
And Michael Humphrey?
Correct.
And from that, did you obtain also business record affidavits from these companies to obtain those, or you may not have, did someone obtain business record affidavits from these companies to verify they were in fact their records?
Yes, typically they send it when they send the records.
And as a result of that, did you ultimately put together and review, put together a PowerPoint presentation, but review some of these records to see, first of all, what type of financial discussions Lynlee and Ben were having?
Yes.
Also to see if there were marital issues in some of these?
Correct.
And also, I think you put together, a timeline was put together of all her being Lynlee's activity on phone and social media the day that Ben was murdered.
Correct.
Now, I want to show you starting with, well, let's knock out a couple little things first. As part of this investigation, you ultimately learned that a gas purchase was made prior to Miss Renick and Michael Humphrey leaving Columbia to go out and allegedly murder her husband.
Yes.
And as a result of that, did you contact, I think it's Phillips 66 or these gas companies to try and determine from the bank record what gas station was listed by that company as number 49 in its location?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit. Is this 84 or 89? I think it's 84, correct? State's Exhibit 84, and ask if you can identify what that is.
That's a list of the locations of the gas stations.
Basically, they provided you with a list of, I don't know how many different gas stations that are numbered in their location and phone numbers, correct?
Correct.
You're right off for State's Exhibit 84.
Any objection? No, Your Honor. 84 is admitted.
And is there a gas station listed as number 49?
There is.
And where is that one located at according to this company?
Its address is 5481 East St. Charles Road, Columbia, Missouri.
And is that on, commonly referred to, located at the Lake of the Woods exit?
Yes.
It's on the eastern side of Columbia along I-70.
Correct.
I'm going to also show you, well, as part of your investigation, did you learn that Miss Renick's spa was in somewhat of a financial trouble?
Yes.
And either at the time of the homicide or afterwards, she was sued by a number of individuals related to the operation of that spa, bills not being paid, that sort of thing.
Correct.
And you obtained those lawsuits?
Correct.
Or the basic information?
Correct.
State's Exhibit 68, is that a lawsuit where Capital Bank is actually suing Ms. Renick?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Tim, did you want to? I'll take them some tablet. It's just those certified copies that were provided.
No problem.
State's Exhibit 71, does this involve a rent possession action by Corona Properties against Essentia Spas?
Yes.
74, is this a show me heating and air conditioning suing Essentia Spas for work equipment provided?
Yes.
And 76 and 78, are they tax lien basically by the Department of Revenue placed against that spa?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would offer State's Exhibit.
Yeah, now just do it one at a time here.
68?
Okay, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
68's admitted. And what else?
71?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
71's admitted.
74? No, Your Honor.
No objection to 74.
76?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
And 78.
All right, just a minute.
Oh, sorry, Judge.
Okay, no objection to 78?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, let me make sure I got this. States Exhibit 68, 71, 74, 76, 78 are admitted.
And Judge, if you're, just to clarify for the record and for what you're looking at, I think when we did the exhibit list, we expected to get those various items separately from the clerk. They came packaged together. That's why, if you look at the exhibit list, numbers are being skipped.
All right, I got it.
Okay, sorry about that. Now, in addition to that, we mentioned you working on some PowerPoints, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 99. And this is a CD, which I believe contains the business record affidavit and all the actual records and the PowerPoint that we discussed a few minutes ago pertaining to some of those financial and marital conversations that Ms. Renick and her husband were having.
Correct.
And is that's what's contained on 99, the CD?
Yes, sir.
And then there's a paper copy of the PowerPoint.
Correct.
Your Honor, I would offer into evidence State's Exhibit 99.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
99 be admitted?
And Judge, with your permission, I'd like to go through, there's 78 slides. I don't intend to go through all of them. I tend to use a few of them as representative.
Okay. Now, you're talking about 99?
99, there's
Okay.
78 slides.
Okay, and you're using the laptop there?
Correct.
Okay.
And Nat, Trooper Shaffer, I think you can either go on, follow on paper. It might be easier to look at the screen as
Yep.
to jump from slide to slide. This first slide is number 3, and it indicates a date that some exchanges between Ben and Lynlee occurred.
Correct.
What is the date and time?
February 2nd, 2017, between 10:01 and 10:11.
And is this information that Ben is sending either by text or Facebook messenger to Lynlee?
I believe it's Facebook.
And can you describe what this slide contains or is showing us?
Basically, they're talking about their budget.
And this is 4 or 5 months prior to his murder.
Correct.
I'm going to have you jump to 6, or I'm going to jump to 6, and we see a message dated what?
February 7th,
And this is, who is contacting who in this message?
Lynlee is contacting Ben.
And she is asking Ben a question.
She's asking if he had heard from Robin about the purchase of the snake business.
Well, it says, the question is actually, have you heard from Robin?
Correct.
And so I was going to ask you, from your investigation, do you believe you know who Robin is referring to?
Yes.
Who is that?
The NHL player, Robin Leonard.
And the jury's heard, but you believe this is possibly in reference to the snake sale that Ben is involved in?
Correct.
From your investigation, you never, other than snakes, you never knew of any connection to a Robin to the case than the one we just discussed?
No.
I'm going to jump ahead to 18. And while we move through some of these, as we get closer to the date of his murder, a lot of these conversations, there's multiple conversations that are similar, are there not?
Correct.
And I think we're not going to talk about all of them. I mean, the defense is free to, but I just want to point out a few and give an example. On slide 18, could you tell us the date?
March 27th.
And this starts out with the way we put this together. Who is communicating to who at the beginning?
Lynlee is talking to Ben.
And then we have his responses there, correct?
Correct.
And what are they discussing on 18?
Again, talking about money. Lynlee's talking about how much money she needs to basically keep the spa. And then Ben is talking about basically how much money they're putting into the business and how much money they're spending and basically bleeding out.
And that is at what time of day?
In the morning.
And this conversation goes on and they have conversations kind of that we're going to talk about that's maybe start in the morning and go on all day, is presumably each of them are maybe at work talking to each other through this messaging.
Correct.
I'm going to jump to 20, which is a later part to some extent of that conversation. Is that fair?
Yes.
And the lower level, Ben is, the second, I guess, paragraph I'd call it, Ben is speaking to Lynlee.
Correct.
And is he talking, what is he talking to her or informing her of?
How much money that they're spending on the spa.
I'm going to jump to 23. We're still on the same date, are we not?
Correct.
And again, this is a little bit later in the day, appears to be a carry-on of the same conversation.
Correct.
And in the second paragraph again, who is communicating to who?
Ben to Lynlee.
And what is he communicating to her at this time?
He's basically saying that he will help her, but she's not letting him help, not giving him information so that he can help her.
And going down, when Lynn responds back to Ben, does he not?
Yes.
And what does he say? Or she say, I'm sorry.
She asked if she should call Chuck.
And I don't think this jury has heard the name Chuck in this case before. Do you know from the basic investigation who Chuck is and what his relationship to Ben and Lynlee was?
Yes.
Who is that?
Chuck Thal was like Ben's financial advisor. Ben had a trust, and whenever he needed money from the trust, he would contact Chuck Thal, and Chuck Thal would be the person who would put it into process so that Ben could get the money back.
Were you aware that whether he provided financial advice to both of them for both of their businesses?
Yes, he did.
Going to jump ahead to 26. What is the date on that slide?
April 21st.
And is Ben informing Lynlee of some news?
Yes.
And what is the news?
That she wasn't paying her bills.
I'm going to jump to slide 28. What is the date on 28?
June 3rd.
So we're about 5 days prior to his murder.
Correct.
And who is communicating here?
Again, Ben to Lynlee.
Ben to Lynlee?
Yes.
And what is he informing her of or talking to her about?
She's not paying her bills still.
Slide 36. What is the date on this slide?
June 5th.
And could you, this is a couple days then before Ben is murdered. And is there a conversation of more, maybe related to some financial, but a little bit about some friction apparently that is going on between the relationship?
Correct.
And what, can you describe that conversation as you've seen it in this document?
Basically, Ben is asking if Lynlee even likes him. She says yes, she loves him. And then she says that she feels unsafe and doesn't trust that he won't take his aggression out on her. And then he says he's never done anything to make her feel that way.
And I guess each spouse can have different opinions of each other's behavior sometimes.
Correct.
Slide 38. This is dated what?
June 6th.
And it's from who is communicating to whom?
Ben to Lynlee.
And what has been informing her on the morning of June 6th, 2 days before he is murdered?
That he's supposed to get $200,000 towards the purchase of the snake business.
So this puts information into Lynlee's mouth about a large amount of money that is expected to arrive.
Correct.
State's exhibit, or slide 43. What date, is this later on that same date?
I don't remember if the other one was June 6th or 5th. But
Yeah, I'm sorry, without going back, it was June 6th in the morning, early morning hours.
Yep.
So this is at what time of day on the same date?
3:40 to 6:55 p.m.
And we see a name Catherine involved in this text exchange?
Yes.
And who is Catherine? Or do you believe you know who Catherine is and what they're referring to here?
I believe it's the babysitter. Is that right?
Yeah, and do you know what they're referring to that's why there would be communication with the babysitter?
They're trying to set up a date night for, I believe, the 8th.
Now, State's Exhibit 46, we're backing up a little bit to talk a little bit more about the relationship, chronologically speaking, so to speak. We're back in May now.
Correct.
And this 46, this slide is dated what?
May 17th.
And what has been communicating to Lynlee on this date?
Basically their relationship issues, talking about, like the title of it says, their sex life.
Well, if you go down to the second bullet point where Ben is communicating, that first sentence there, if you could read that to yourself, and does that refresh what they're communicating about here?
Yeah, basically they're not having sex.
Ben feels like she doesn't have any interest in it.
Correct.
And we haven't go, and I don't intend to go through every slide, but this day kicks off a long and lengthy conversation, argument between the two of them about their sex life and their personality, all kinds of different stuff.
Correct.
And they talk about, do they not, about an incident of sexual assault or abuse that Lynlee believes Ben performed or caused upon her.
Yes.
And I think that's the very next slide, which is 47. After Ben complains to her about not feeling loved or wanted, in my words, Lynlee responds, does she not?
Yes.
And I don't need you to tell me, read it all, but does she complain and reference this sexual assault?
She does.
And what does she describe the incident as having been to Ben?
Basically, he tried to have sex with her while she was sleeping, and she woke up with his fingers inside of her.
And she did not like that.
Correct.
And again, this conversation goes on and on, for a lengthy time.
Correct.
They talk about whether they should go to counseling, things of that nature.
Correct.
But at the end of it, State's Exhibit 52, does Lynlee say anything to Ben to reassure him? Read whether it's reassuring or not, read her first statement later on from Lynlee to Ben that's on that.
Okay, yeah, she says she still loves him.
And does she tell him she's been faithful in so many words?
Yes.
What does she say?
This literally has nothing to do with anybody else.
And well, before that she says there never has been anyone else.
Correct.
And again, this conversation goes on for quite a while.
Correct.
You were aware that Ashley Shaw has reported to law enforcement and told this jury about an incident she was involved with Lynlee in poisoning Ben, correct?
Yes.
Were there text messages or messaging between the two of them that referenced that?
Between the two of who?
Between Lynlee and Ben referencing that incident?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I threw Ashley out there. I think I confused you. I'm going to move to 74. What date is this slide?
June 2nd.
And on this slide, what is Lynlee referring to? What does Lynlee say to Ben? Well, let me do it this way. She references this poisoning incident, correct?
Correct.
And this is actually, this incident, or what she's referencing here, is not only that, but this, bad question. She's already talked, or there'd been a conversation in late May 27th, about this sexual assault incident.
Correct.
But in June 2nd, she's also describing having great sex with Ben, is she not?
Correct.
If you could read that first exchange from Lynlee to Ben on June 2nd, I would thank her for it.
Lynlee says, what do I do to make you feel that way? What am I not doing outside of sex to make you feel that way? And we had crazy, amazing sex before both of us almost died from food poisoning. I don't shy away from you cuddling with me or touching me.
Now I want to also go to the last slide in this 78. What is the date of this slide?
June 7th.
And who initiates the conversation on this date?
Lynlee to Ben.
And what does she ask him on June 7th? Well, this is the day before Ben is murdered.
Correct.
What does she ask Ben the day before he is murdered.
When does Phil come?
And from the investigation, you recognize Phil's the rat guy.
Correct.
Supplies, I guess, thousands of rats for these
Correct.
thousands of snakes. And she's asking Ben the day before he's murdered when he shows.
Correct.
Does Ben respond?
Yes.
What does he say?
12-1 typically, and then he asks why with a question mark and exclamation point.
And what does Lynlee reference then?
Just wondering, and then she talks about their date.
Now, you also prepared a PowerPoint of the social media activity of Miss Renick on the day her husband was murdered, correct?
Correct.
And that includes basically all her phone calls, all her text messages, any social messaging on Facebook Messenger, all that stuff.
Correct.
And you weren't necessarily able to get, when it came to text messages, the actual text messages that a text was sent sometimes.
Correct.
You were able to get the messages off of Facebook sometimes.
Yes.
And you weren't able to get the substance of phone calls, just maybe when they occurred and maybe the duration.
Correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 85 and ask if State's Exhibit 85, and the same question I asked you about the earlier one. Is 85 a CD that contains basically the business record affidavit for all these records, the records themselves, and then a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
And is there also a paper copy of the PowerPoint presentation?
There is.
Your Honor, I would offer State's Exhibit 85.
No objection.
No objection to 85. 85 is admitted.
And Judge, again, could I go through this with...
Yeah, I think it's... Have you started it?
No, I just wanted to ask.
I think it's ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, okay.
On the first, I'm going to pull up the messages from the first slide. At what time of morning does Lynlee begin texting that morning?
6:13.
And who is she initially texting with?
Michael Humphrey.
And does she ask him at 6:14 a question through a text message?
Yes.
And some of these are actually from not her phone, but Michael's phone. They're all put together.
Correct.
And what does she ask him at 6:14 a.m. that morning?
If he's going to make it to Columbia.
Does he respond at 6:16?
He does.
And what does he respond?
He's got to wait for the parts to get there.
And what does she reply to that?
She asks him, what are you thinking?
And does she reply or send him another text?
Yep, she says that she can talk on the phone in 20 minutes.
And do they basically say, give me a call?
Yep.
Does she call Michael Humphrey at that morning?
She does.
And how long do they speak that morning?
11 minutes.
And after that call, does she, or at some point during that call, I guess, does she receive a contact from someone else?
Yes, from Ben.
And tell us what Ben and her begin kind of discussing that morning.
They're talking about their day and talking about their date that they're supposed to have.
And at 6:45, Ben has sent her a video.
Yep.
I think he does that a couple times.
Correct.
And when you actually were able to see these videos.
Yes.
What were these videos that Ben was sending her of?
I don't recall. He sent a lot of videos of him messing with the snakes.
It was always like snakes type
Yeah.
stuff. It wasn't anything from him to her of a sexual nature.
Correct.
You had mentioned Ben and her continued this conversation. And are they just kind of some way, I guess, like husband and wife, hey, how's your days going? That sort of tough talk is going on.
Yes.
But she does get in contact again at 7:02 with whom?
Michael Humphrey.
And she tells him what?
She's heading to Columbia, and then she says that presumably Ashley Shaw is a nervous wreck.
And does she include, I don't know what you call that, a abbreviation that's common on the internet?
Yes.
And what is that?
LOL or laugh out loud.
And does she add that somebody else apparently, or she then sends a message to Ben in response to his earlier question about who was working, so to speak?
Correct.
And he asked how busy she was, that kind of thing.
Yes.
At 7:04, this slide contains a series of messages between Ben and Lynlee, correct?
Correct.
And what are they discussing?
Just how busy the spa is going to be, and then Ben actually asks if she's upset with him because she's short.
And again, it's kind of a common maybe conversation that maybe spouses have with each other when they're communicating in this manner.
Correct.
And this conversation continues through 7:13, does it not?
Yes.
At 7:14, Lynlee receives a text message from Michael.
Correct.
And this was in response to a previous text she had sent him.
Yes.
And what was, she says what?
Boo, no, I understand.
And what text message is that in reference to that she's responding to?
Not 100% sure without going back. Maybe they headed to Columbia. I'm not sure.
Having to do maybe with that car and that's the
Yeah.
car parts of that sort, being unsure. The two of them, Lynlee and Michael, then begin a text message, correct?
Correct.
And in this, can you tell the jury what the two of them are discussing at this point in time?
Basically how tired they are.
Well, at 7:19, Lynlee says something is exhausting.
Yeah, she said, I never knew how exhausting this was going to be. And he says he's laid back.
And does he offer her a retreat from her problem, so to speak?
Yes.
And do you understand what he's communicating to her there?
Yes.
What is he trying to communicate to her?
A mound of pillow or like possibly a hit of meth or something.
And then Lynlee goes to describe, I guess, her morning at Starbucks.
Correct.
And then this conversation continues here.
Correct.
And that basic conversation ends between them when they're talking about the mound of pillows and what happened at Starbucks at 7:42, correct?
Yes.
At 9:56, though, which is an hour and 15 minutes later, maybe?
Yep.
Or is that 2 hours? 2 hours.
2 hours.
15 minutes later. Who contacts who at 9:56?
Lynlee sends Michael Humphrey another message.
And what does she say at this point in time?
How's it looking?
And do you believe that to mean something?
Yeah, like when are you going to be here, basically?
And at 10, is there a response that's given before 10:28?
No.
But Lynlee at 10:28 calls somebody, correct?
Yes, Michael Humphrey.
And they speak for how long?
3 minutes.
And then at 10:30, does Lynlee receive a call?
Yes.
From whom?
Michael Humphrey.
And how long do they speak on that occasion?
1 minute.
And when those records say 1 minute, that doesn't necessarily mean even they spoke for a minute, that just the call came through.
Correct.
At 10:34, again, Lynlee and Ben are back into one of these conversations about how their days are going, correct?
Correct.
Ben's describing, I guess, doing some weightlifting.
Correct.
And then there's a phone call from Rachel to Lynlee at 10:38, correct?
Correct.
But there's also just discussion, again, like spouses, about how their day's going.
Correct.
This night, you understand the two of them, Lynlee and Ben, were supposed to do something that evening, correct?
Correct.
What were they doing?
They were going on a date to watch Wonder Woman.
At 10:49, is there some first indication this day that there may be a problem with going out to the movie?
Yes, she says she has a monster headache.
Now, at 10:56, does this conversation about this headache basically continue between the two of them?
Yes.
And again, there's a video sent by Ben to Lynlee.
Correct.
And he references a call also from Chuck.
Yep.
And you believe this to be the Chuck Thal we talked about before.
Correct.
At 11:17, there's a couple of messages sent from Ben to Lynlee. Does it appear that he spoke to Chuck and is relaying this information now to Lynlee about their financial situation?
Yes.
And does that conversation continue throughout the next few minutes?
Yes.
Up till 12:19, the two of them appear to be just having, again, one of these standard husband-wife conversations.
Correct.
At 12:40, is a call placed by Lynlee to someone?
Yep. Michael Humphrey.
And how long do the two of them speak?
2 minutes.
Her next activity is to send a Facebook message to her husband, correct?
Correct.
And what is she also? Does she have a complaint during this message?
She does.
What is that?
Again, about the headache.
And at 12:49, she asked Ben what?
It's not a...
Don't you need a song?
She asked Ben how his day is.
And then after that, she has a text conversation with whom?
Eric Perman.
And back to 1:16, does Ben respond to her earlier question about how his day is going?
Yes.
And is he now describing to her information about Robert Leonard, what's going on there, as well as the snakes themselves?
Yes.
I mean, the sunset ovulation has to do with snakes breeding.
Correct.
Giving birth, I guess. And this conversation continues from Ben to Lynlee about some of the snakes.
Correct.
And at 1:34, he indicates that the value of some of these small clutches or groups of snakes is $35,000 to $45,000.
Correct.
And at 1:34, he kind of ends this conversation a little bit before it's interrupted again from Ben to Lynlee about the same conversation.
Correct.
Because at 1:36, Lynlee again texts who?
Michael Humphrey.
And what does she ask him?
Are you on your way?
And at about the same time, Ben again responds to her complaining about the deal with Robin and the money.
Correct.
Starting on this slide, at 1:37, Ben and Lynlee Ben's basically saying, I'm getting back to business kind of thing.
Correct.
Who does she call at 1:39?
Michael Humphrey.
And they speak for how long?
2 minutes.
And again, there's a text conversation between her and
Eric Perman.
And then a Facebook message is sent from Ben to Lynlee about what?
Trying to figure out why $200 came out of their account.
And Lynlee's again texting with Eric. I should back up.
Yes.
Lynlee at 1:54 calls who?
Rachel Hunt.
And they speak for a few minutes.
Yep.
And then she calls whom?
Ashley Shaw.
And then there's a Facebook message from Lynlee to Ben at 2.
Correct.
And what is she doing there?
Telling him what the withdrawal was.
In response to his earlier question.
Correct.
And basically, he then says, hey, that's okay, just checking.
Yep.
At 2:04, Ben sends a message to Lynlee, correct?
Correct.
And what does he tell her at 2:04?
That he can't stop looking at nude photos that she had sent him.
And did you see, when you're looking through these records, nude photos that she apparently has sent him?
Yes.
These are nude photos of who?
Of Lynlee.
And apparently, they're married, but they got a date night. They're going to be alone without the kids that night, correct?
Correct.
And do they continue talking about this?
Yes.
And she, in fact, does she send him at 2:27 more photos?
Yes.
And he's kind of thanking her for them.
Correct.
And seems appreciative of it.
Correct.
And they continue this conversation. Basically, he's indicating how distracting it is from work and stuff like that.
Correct.
At 2:35, what does Lynlee message to Ben?
She says, I fucking love you too. I unfortunately can't hang out naked all day in a room, but I will find time another day.
And this conversation somewhat continues, and Ben asks her, though, at 2:37, a question.
Yes, he asks how her head is.
And does she tell him?
She says it's basically still bad and she's getting ready to take more medication.
And he responds what?
Fuck, get it better.
Basically, he's wanting to have a good time with his wife that evening.
Correct.
At 3:45, Ben messages Lynlee what?
He asked if she is going to pick up the kids or if he needs to.
And this, at 3:45, this would have been, well, let's back up a little bit. I should have asked you that question. I'm sorry. There's a gap beginning in communication from Lynlee to anyone for a period of time beginning here.
Correct.
There is a message sent, but the investigation shows who sent that message.
Ashley Shaw.
And is this the period of time where Lynlee and Michael have left the spa and left her phone behind?
Yes.
And we know that because we went through this. We asked about the gas.
Objection, Your Honor, that invades the province of the jury.
I don't think it does, Judge. I'm asking about
drawing
evidence.
conclusions that are up to the jury and not the state.
Well, I suppose you could preface it, but based on the state's
Yeah, that's where
submission.
That's where I was going, Judge.
Okay. So why don't you rephrase your question?
Instead of saying we know, there's some evidence from the bank records as to what time a transaction occurred at that gas station we just talked about.
Correct.
And so at 3:45, whoops, hit it one too many times. At 3:45, while Lynlee and Michael are driving out to the state facility, Ben messages Lynlee, correct?
Correct.
And what does he ask her?
If she's going to pick up the children or if he needs to.
And in response to that, someone uses, and do you know who is using Ashley or Lynlee's account to respond back?
Ashley Shaw.
And she responds what?
I need you to. I'm not going to be able to leave right now.
Then there aren't any more conversations or text messages after that time period from Ben at all.
Correct.
And you wouldn't have expected him to be on his social media accounts after that time, would you?
No.
Why not?
He's dead.
At 5:13, though, Lynlee sends a text message to Ben, correct?
Correct.
And what does she say?
It says, hey, love, I need to stop and get gas, then home. I'll text Catherine and let her know to come at like 5:45 so you don't have to wait with her and the kids for me.
And then her next text messages are with Catherine Fox.
Correct.
At 5:25, would Lynlee and Michael have still been together? Physically together?
I think they would have probably just left.
Does Lynlee send Michael a text message?
Yes.
And what does she say to him?
Hope your car, I think it should be got you back safe, probably needs more work, haha.
And one of the reasons you think the word "got" should be in there, she includes it next, like she left it out.
Yep.
And does Michael respond a few minutes later?
He does.
What does he say?
Yeah, almost home, still has a loose feel and vibrating, but hasn't fallen off, and the alternator seems to be charging solidly, so that's a plus.
And at 5:35, Lynlee continues this conversation.
Yes.
And what do they talk about? Or what does she say?
Basically, she's saying, try again tomorrow. Or no, that's from Michael, sorry. They're talking about setting up an appointment for a massage the following day.
Was that part of the cover story? Is that why he was at the spa that day getting a cover story?
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
Lack of what now?
Lack of personal knowledge, Your Honor. The witness doesn't have sufficient information to know that.
Well, I don't know whether he does or not. I assume he knows his
There
case.
should be a foundation, then, I think.
Well, from your investigation, were you made aware of what these individuals said about that day and why they were together?
Okay, let's do this for the record. I'm on a sustained foundation. Now you're asking a foundational question, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, Judge.
Okay, so I'm sustaining his objection, lay a foundation, and that's what you're doing, right?
Yes, sir.
Ask it a question again. I don't think you
I'm sorry. I was asking you, sir, from the investigation, were you aware that whether these individuals had a story about why they were together on the day of the murder?
Yes.
And what was that?
Michael was getting a massage.
And so now they're discussing having gotten this massage.
Correct.
Do you believe these text messages are genuine? What do you believe they are?
An alibi.
And at 5:35, Lynlee receives a text message from, what does he say?
Maybe try this again tomorrow if this temperamental bitch is on a good day, or whenever you got that doesn't affect biz.
And again, this try tomorrow you believe is a massage, not yet another murder.
Correct.
And at 5:40, does Lynlee respond?
Yes.
What does she say?
Yeah, that works. I could do an 11 or any time between 1 and 4.
So she's happy to see him the next day
Correct.
and give him another massage.
Yep.
At 5:40, Lynlee places a phone call to the babysitter, correct?
Correct.
At 5:45, Lynlee receives a call from Immaculate Conception School, correct?
Correct.
And what's Immaculate Conception School's role in this?
They were that's where her children are at, where Ben was asking if he needed to pick them up earlier.
And the school calls her, and from your investigation, you know she now finds out she's supposed to pick up the kids because Ben didn't.
Correct.
And in response to that, does she begin calling various locations, it appears, where she thinks Ben might be?
Yes.
And she does that at 5:45. She calls the snake facility.
Correct.
And at 5:46, she calls Ben's cell.
Correct.
5:48, she sends a Facebook message. And what does that say?
I just got a call from the school that Maddie and Emma are still there. Are you on your way?
And at 5:48 again, she calls the babysitter.
Correct.
At 5:49, she continues these calls to the snake facility, correct?
Correct.
And at 5:50, does she send another message via Facebook to Ben?
She does.
And what does she say in this message?
At least call me back. Excuse me. At least call me back, please. I called Catherine and told her to hold off on coming.
And at 5:51, she sends another call to his cell phone.
Correct.
And at 5:52, sends yet another Facebook message to Lynlee, from Lynlee to Ben.
Correct.
And it says what?
If you're on the phone with Robin, call him back and call me.
And she adds how many exclamation points?
2.
She calls the snake facility at 5:59 again.
Correct.
At 6 o'clock, she calls the cell phone again.
Correct.
And at 6:01, another Facebook message. And what is that Facebook message?
Starting to worry a little, love. Please call me back.
And again, how many exclamation points?
2.
Lynlee places 2 more calls to Renick Reptile, correct?
Correct.
And while her husband is allegedly dead on the floor, at 6:17 she begins texting with one of her lovers, correct?
Correct.
And she continues that text conversation, both of them sending and receiving.
Correct.
At 6:20, in response to her prior conversation with Michael, she sees a response when she offers to give him a massage next day from Michael, correct?
Correct.
What does he say?
He says, right on, got to help the neighbor and maybe do another look over on the beast. I'll let you know in the morning. Thanks again for all the help, as well to your girls. Have a good evening. As always, message if you want to.
And she continues then texting with her lover.
Correct.
And Lynlee responds to Michael, does she not?
Yep.
And what does she say?
It's no problem at all. Just happy you weren't stranded. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
And the conversation with her lover, Eric Bremer, continues.
Correct.
And we are now at 6:26 while this conversation continues.
Yes.
And we know at 6:31 she places a phone call, correct?
Correct.
To whom?
Sam.
Reporting what?
That Ben is dead.
And that is what this, 6:31 is that call?
Correct.
At 6:33 she makes it out, according to her record, to 6:33 call to 911.
Correct.
And then she calls, do you know who the Gallatins are at 6:45?
Her dad.
And she receives a call back.
Correct.
Teresa Flippick is called that night.
Correct.
Do you know who Teresa might be?
I think it's just a friend.
Well, do you remember her? There was a Flippick that knew something about the snakes and came to help out.
Yep.
And at 7:34, she texts to Eric Bremer.
Correct.
And she receives a call from Charles Saul, the fellow we talked about before.
Correct.
And she makes a series of calls and text messages, does she not?
Yes.
And her last contact that night is with Eric Bremer and her father, or
Yes.
her home.
Yep.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions for...
Okay, cross.
Trooper, good afternoon. You were not at the Division of Drug and Crime Control on the date of Ben's murder, correct?
Correct.
In what capacity were you employed on that day?
Road trooper.
What?
A road trooper.
Okay. When did you come to the Division of Drug and Crime Control?
So I did an internship, I believe November of 2017, and then I got into the unit the 1st of February of 2018.
Now, you became, at some point, the lead investigator on this case.
Correct.
Is a lead investigator the same thing as a case agent?
Correct.
What are the responsibilities of a lead investigator, Trooper?
Basically, the lead investigator is responsible for keeping track of the investigation, the direction of the investigation. When leads come up, they'll either take care of them themselves or they'll give them to other people, delegate so that stuff gets done. And then they make sure that the people who do leads for them write the reports and that they get into the case file.
So, in a sense, it's your job to make sure all the relevant information is found?
Correct.
And it's your job to disclose all the significant facts in the reports so that the jury can see it during trial?
Correct.
And you agree that you have to disclose facts that even oppose a theory of the Highway Patrol so that the jury can see those facts too?
Correct.
Now, is it fair to say that Devin Faust left the DDCC unit unexpectedly? Or is that not fair to say?
He's still in DDCC.
Okay. At some point, are you aware of him leaving that particular investigation unit that you were in?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when he left and he went to the bomb squad.
Correct.
Would you characterize his leaving, going to the bomb squad as an unexpected transition?
Not really.
Okay. But he did leave and go to the bomb squad.
Correct.
And after he did that, you took over and became the case agent or lead investigator for the Renick homicide.
Correct.
And you did that automatically.
What do you mean by automatic?
Well, nobody specifically assigned you to the Renick investigation.
No.
Okay. You were never called in for a meeting and a supervisor said, asked you if you wanted to become the lead investigator.
That's actually exactly how it works.
Okay. And so you then, I guess, became lead investigator. Well, was there anybody else that, well, I'll withdraw the question. I'll move on. So when did you become the lead investigator?
When Devin left,
When was that?
I don't know the date.
Did you write a report?
No.
Is your becoming a lead investigator a significant event in the life of the Renick investigation?
I wouldn't say yes.
Do you remember taking a deposition around May of this year, Trooper?
Yep.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember describing in that deposition that when you came on the unit, the case was cold?
Possibly.
Okay, when you say possibly, does that mean you do remember or don't remember?
If it's in there, you have the transcript, so if it says it, then I said it.
Do you remember saying whether the case was cold or not?
I don't recall.
Okay. Please take that, please. And please review the top of that transcription page, and then when you're done, hand it back to me.
Just the top, or what do you want me to read?
Read the top, please. 2 seconds. Did you finish?
Yep.
Does that help you remember whether or not you described the case as cold to another individual?
Well, in that, you asked if I described it as cold to Brandon, and yes, I did. And I also described it as cold to Ashley, but there was a reason behind describing it as cold for the investigation.
Did you not also say that there hadn't been any substantial leads in the Renick case in a year and a half?
Yes.
And I'm going to suggest that you took over the case in April of 2019. Does that sound
Sure.
correct? When you took over, now you're allowed now to make your own decisions and act independently with the Renick case, right?
I think you're being overly vague. Like, I don't work by myself. We are a unit and everything goes through my supervisor. So I'm not making calls, it's not me by myself making all of the calls. It's a unit and my supervisor has say,
Lynlee wasn't arrested when you took over the unit.
obviously.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
But you considered her the main suspect still?
Based on the evidence, yes.
Now, when you sat for your deposition in May, do you remember me asking you if you ever spoke to Brian Higginbotham?
I don't recall.
Do you recall me asking you if you ever spoke to a woman named Caitlin Church?
I don't recall.
Do me a favor, Trooper, and look at lines 14 through 23 for me on that deposition transcript.
Okay.
Don't you say in that deposition transcript that the name Caitlin Church doesn't sound familiar?
Yep.
And don't you say that you don't believe that you ever spoke to Brian Higginbotham?
Correct.
Wasn't there a Montgomery police report in the file that Caitlin Church stated that Brian Higginbotham might be involved?
It's possible. I'll take your word for it.
Didn't you say that you reviewed the entire case file?
I did.
Now, do you remember me asking you if you knew if Lynlee Renick had a criminal history?
You probably did.
Do you remember what your answer to that was?
I don't believe so.
Do you remember me asking you if Lynlee Renick had any firearms training?
I don't.
Do you remember what your answer was to that?
Probably, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Do you remember me asking you what a Vichy shower is?
Probably.
And do you remember what your answer was to that?
I probably had no clue at that time, or maybe I did, I don't know. Well, at the depot, I would have known.
Okay. Well, you're saying you would have known what a Vichy shower was by the time of the depot?
I would assume so.
Would you please review line 5 and 6 of that transcript, please?
Yep.
Do I ask you if you know what a Vichy shower is?
You do?
And what's your response?
At first I say I have no idea, and then you said that that was the shower at the Essentia Spa, and I said, okay, yes.
You would agree that having no idea what a Vichy shower is not the same thing as you probably knowing what a Vichy shower is, correct?
I would say I probably didn't know the terminology for it, but I knew what it was.
Did you ever see this Vichy shower?
Nope.
Now, do you remember me asking you if you knew if Lynlee ever had a panic attack and had
I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry?
I can't hear you.
Okay. I'll start over. Do you remember me asking you if you knew whether or not Lynlee had a panic attack and had to be hospitalized following the murder?
Yeah, I think I said I didn't know that.
Okay. And do you remember me asking you if you ever talked to a gentleman named Leandre Robinson?
No.
Could you please review lines 3 through 5 for me on that transcript, Trooper? Does it say there that did you ever talk to an individual named Leandre Robinson?
Yes.
And what's your response?
I'm not sure.
Wasn't Leandre Robinson the person that was supposed to get Ashley Shaw the Percocet pills?
Yep.
Why didn't you go interview Leandre Robinson?
I don't know.
Do you remember me asking you who Mike Scarlett was?
I don't recall.
Would you please review lines 16 through 19?
Okay.
Don't I ask there, are you aware, do you know who Mike Scarlett is?
You do?
And what's your answer?
I don't.
Do you know if I ask you if you're aware that Mike Scarlett heard a gunshot and if he's aware that Mike Scarlett heard a woman scream followed by a gunshot on 6/8?
Yeah, I just saw it.
Okay, and what was your answer to that question?
Same thing, I did not know.
Okay. Now, do you remember me asking you if you saw Devin, or whether or not Devin saw Lynlee throwing up outside of a courthouse on 6/8?
I don't recall it, but I didn't know that.
Okay. Do you remember me asking you if an individual named Brandon Blackwell told Devin Faust that he was 110% sure that Lenny did not kill Ben?
Yes.
And what was your answer to that?
If I remembered that, I don't remember what my answer was.
Okay. I want you to read lines 9 through 25 on that page. So, did I ask you that question if Brandon Blackwell said?
You did.
Okay, and what ultimately was your answer?
If it's in his report, that's what he said.
Well, keep going. What does it say out eventually? After you're done dodging the question.
It says I'm not sure.
And did I not also ask you if Brandon Blackwell wrote a letter to Judge Schneider telling her that he had extensive memory loss?
I believe you did.
And what was your answer to that?
Not sure.
And did I ask you if Lynlee Renick's family law attorney had filed an order of child custody on Brandon Blackwell while he was incarcerated in the Boone County Jail?
Probably.
And what was your answer to that?
I think I knew about that possibly. I don't recall.
Well, did you know about it or did you not know about it?
Well, show me the depot and I'll tell you.
Refer your attention to line 12 through 15. Do I ask you if you're aware if a child custody petition was served on Brandon Blackwell?
Yep.
And what's your answer?
Nope.
And you never talked to an individual named Jeff Arzola?
What was the name?
Jeff Arzola?
No, I don't believe so.
And you never pulled Ashley Shaw's phone records for the time of the murder, correct?
No.
Or her bank records?
No.
And you never went to the Essentia Spa while it was open? You may have on the 22nd, or did you not?
I went after it was closed and was owned by another beauty company.
Okay. Did you ever speak to a woman named Brittany Bishop?
I have no idea.
Did you ever speak to a woman named Becca Highland?
I don't believe so.
You spoke, do you know how many spa employees there were at Essentia Spa?
I think maybe 4 or 5, I'm not sure.
Okay. How many spa employees did you talk to?
I talked to Ashley Shaw and I talked to Rachel Hunt.
Okay. And you didn't talk to any other co-workers?
I don't believe so.
Now, do you recall, you said you reviewed the file entirely, right?
Correct.
That would include all the interviews with Lenny, right?
Correct.
Do you recall Master Sergeant Reynolds telling Lynlee that the spa was the most important thing to her besides her kids?
I don't recall him saying that specifically, but you said it earlier, so I'll take your word for it.
Okay. So that would mean that that would mean that for Lynlee to kill Ben, she would have to take Emma's father from her.
I don't understand the question.
So if Lynlee chose to kill Ben, she would also be necessarily making the same decision to remove Ben from his own daughter's life.
Correct.
Even though Ben's daughter and Lynlee's daughter are one of the most important things, according to Sergeant Reynolds, in Lynlee's life.
Okay.
Okay, what?
Do you have a question?
Did you ever consider why Lynlee would kill Ben if her children were so important to her and her children's feelings were so important to her?
And her children's what?
Feelings were so important to her? Did you ever consider that?
I guess, I don't know. You always wonder why people kill people and it hurts other people, but people do stupid stuff all the time, so I guess I don't understand what you're asking.
You're aware that Ben didn't have a will, right?
No.
Okay. You're aware that the trust funds did not go to Lynlee. They went to Ben's descendants, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you remember me asking you what determines where funds that are held inside the trust go?
I don't recall you asking that.
I'm going to refer your attention to lines 7 through 11, Trooper. Do I not say there what determines in a trust who gets the funds that are held within the trust?
Yep.
What?
Yes.
And isn't your answer whatever is written in the trust and the trustee ultimately?
Correct.
I want to refer your attention, Trooper, to, first of all, you wrote a summary of investigation in this case, right?
Correct.
That was the end of your investigation after Lenny was arrested. You want to see it?
Well, it wasn't the end. There was stuff done after. So like, because there were still interviews, I believe Rachel Hunt was possibly interviewed after the summary was written. So it doesn't, a case summary doesn't end, and actually the patrol has gotten away from case summaries because of that. The case summary used to be it's basically a synopsis of what has happened in the case.
That is interesting. I just want to know if this is a summary of your investigation.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, that's what.
Let me see it.
Okay.
This part would be my summary. This part is notes of, I don't believe they're mine.
Okay. Well, would you please go to, I'll fix on page 2, paragraph F, I want to draw, I'm going to put a little dot on it so you can see it. Would you please read the sentence in your summary where that blue dot is? Read that sentence to the jury.
It says, Thal stated he was also the trustee of Benjamin's life insurance policy of $1 million, and Lynlee was a sole beneficiary. Keep going all the way
That's
through?
fine.
Okay.
The trustee is in charge of trust funds, correct?
I guess, yeah.
And you write that Charles Stahl is the trustee of the life insurance policy for $1 million.
Okay.
And the trust document says that Emma gets the assets from the trust fund, right?
Okay.
Wouldn't that seem to suggest that the life insurance policy was transferred to the trust fund?
Perhaps, I don't know.
Isn't one of the main points of your case that Lenny was going to get this really big $1 million life insurance policy?
I don't think that's a main point of the case. I think that is part of, but I think the evidence is the main point of the case.
Huh, I must have missed that. And I think you testified that Ben was supposed to get $1.5 million from Robin Lenner. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that deal didn't go through after Ben died, right?
I think some of it did, but not all of it.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure. I said I think.
Okay. Now, are you aware also that Ben was about to breed a special anaconda called a T-positive gene anaconda?
Yes.
And do you know how much each one of those T-positive gene anacondas was supposed to be worth?
Nope.
If I were to say $25,000, would that sound correct?
Sure.
And those snakes weren't hatched also because Ben died, right?
I have no idea.
So Lynlee lost quite a bit of money by Ben passing away. Wouldn't you agree?
Lost? No.
Now, did you see the part in the interview of Ashley Shaw on 10/6 where she was interviewed by Corporal Haslag?
What do you mean, did I see the part?
Did you review the transcript?
I probably have, yes.
Okay. Well, then, did you review the part where Ashley Shaw said she would be totally shocked if Lynlee Renick had anything to do with Ben's murder?
Yes.
Did you read a supplemental report in which Eric Bremer said he would be shocked if Lynlee committed the murder?
Yes.
And that she's the nicest person I've ever met?
Yes.
And that he says, like I've always felt, I left every interaction with her feeling better about who I was?
Sure. I don't remember that, but he probably said it.
And do you remember Chuck Thal freely stating that he did not believe Lynlee Renick would be capable of being involved in Benjamin Renick's murder?
Yes.
Do you remember Sam Renick stating that he didn't think Lynlee Renick would be involved in Ben's murder?
Yes.
Do you remember Rachel Hunt stating that she did not believe that Lynlee Renick could be involved in Ben's murder?
Yes.
And are you aware that Brian McGowan, the Montgomery County deputy, wrote in his report that he wrote that Lynlee was crying hysterically on the night of Ben's murder?
I don't recall that, but he probably wrote it.
And do you recall that Amanda Lee Harlan and Gracie Harlan said that they heard Sam on the phone with somebody who was screaming bloody murder? Do you remember reading that?
Probably.
Do you remember Lendell Gallatin saying that Lynlee was completely tore up?
Excuse me for a second. Just a quick question. Yeah. All good? Okay. Hey, your food's here. Okay? So we're not going to let that go bad. So we're going to come back with this gentleman after you all are done eating. Okay? All right. Again, I remind you not to talk about the case or form or express anything about it until it's finally given to you to decide. You can go back and eat with the bailiff. Okay?
All right, please.
And you can go ahead and step down.
Trooper, this was the first homicide case you were working as lead investigator. Is that correct?
That is incorrect.
You've been a lead in the Ben Renick homicide investigation was not the first homicide in which you were the lead investigator?
Well, you just changed your question.
Okay.
Is this the first homicide that I've worked? No. Is this the first homicide that I was lead investigator? Yes.
And so, as the lead investigator then, you said that you had reviewed all the case file.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand you can't memorize every word, but you did review Lynlee Renick's 10-5 interview with Corporal Faust, right?
Correct.
Did you read the, well, let me just ask you to review this page. Paragraph 14.
Excuse me, Judge, can we approach for a second?
Yeah.
Ready, Di? Okay, now, rephrase your question.
Thank you. Did you ever ask Lynlee Renick prior, or did you ever ask Lynlee Renick after you reviewed this file whether she was going to the spa or whether she was going to the reptile facility with Michael Humphrey to get a divorce?
I would have loved to have talked to Lynlee Renick, but Lynlee Renick lawyered up and I wasn't allowed to talk to
Can
her.
we approach her?
Okay, I'll let you get set up. I need to tell you all something after she gets... Okay, disregard the last answer of this witness. Ask your question, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Were you aware, Trooper, that half of the shells in the reptile facility were not picked up?
Yes.
And you were aware that half of the other shells were picked up?
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever ask yourself why somebody who wanted to pick up the shells would only pick up half of them?
That's already been discussed and we know why.
So you did. The answer to my question is yes?
If I wondered?
Yes.
What is the, yes.
You did. Okay. Did you ever attempt to investigate whether Brian Higginbotham was involved in the case?
No.
Now, are you familiar with a person named Brandon Blackwell?
I am.
Who is, or can you tell the jury who Brandon Blackwell is?
Brandon Blackwell is one of the several people Lynlee was having an affair with. After Ben was killed, Brandon and Lynlee had a child together.
If you could just describe like the relationship briefly.
Is that enough?
Yes. So at some point, you went to speak with Brandon Blackwell around September of 2019, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you state in a deposition that the reason you went to speak with Brandon Blackwell was because you were reviewing CaseNet and it showed that he was paying child support to Lynlee?
I believe so, yes.
Why was child support relevant in your decision to go speak to Brandon Blackwell?
So when we work investigations, oftentimes you'll find that people lie to you initially, especially when they're in a romantic relationship. So when a romantic relationship breaks, oftentimes people who had lied to you, if you're in a romantic relationship, that person will confide in you. So it was thought that perhaps Brandon Blackwell knew more because Brandon Blackwell was in a long-term relationship, had a child with Lynlee, so maybe she confided in him, and then they had broken up, is what we believed. If he's paying child support, that would be a common thought.
You weren't going to tell Brandon Blackwell that if you help us convict Lynlee Renick of murder, you're not going to have to pay child support anymore because she's going to be in prison?
I don't even have that authority.
You have the authority to arrest people, don't you?
You just talked about child support, somebody paying child support. I have no authority over child support.
Well, let's back up a second. If a person is in jail, they're not going to be taking care of their child, correct?
Hypothetically?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So a person being in jail may make their partner's obligations for child support go down, right?
I'm going to object. Mr. Shaffer, with all due respect, is not an attorney, and the child support, I believe, remains. You don't stop paying child support because somebody else was
What's
in
the
jail.
objection?
It's without relevance and with lack of foundation at this point, Judge.
That objection is overruled.
So, Lynlee Renick,
And I would add speculation too, Judge. But
I think it's a reasonable inference.
That objection is overruled.
So, Brandon Blackwell owing Lynlee Renick child support was a factor in your decision to go talk to Brandon Blackwell in September of 2019.
I think you're making a leap of,
This will go a lot easier if you just answer the question.
well, if you would ask me a question or let me answer the question, then I will answer it.
Was your going to speak with Brandon Blackwell in September 2019, was his obligation to pay Lynlee Renick child support, was that a factor in your decision to go speak with him about the investigation?
A factor, yes.
Did you tell Curtis and Brandon, did you speak with Brandon Blackwell's parents when you went to talk, well, did you ever, I'll withdraw the question and ask another one. Did you ever interview or speak with people named Curtis and Brandy Blackwell?
I did.
Did you ever tell Curtis and Brandy Blackwell that Lynlee Renick was a person of interest in your investigation?
Probably.
Now, in January of 2014, did Curtis Blackwell contact you about his son, Brandon Blackwell?
He did.
And where was Brandon Blackwell on January the 14th of 2020?
Boone County Jail.
Could you tell the jury why he was in the Boone County Jail?
Violation of a protection order against Lynlee.
Okay. Now, you have taken an oath this afternoon to tell the whole truth, correct?
Correct.
Is that the whole truth?
What are you referring to?
Wasn't he charged with more than violation of an order of protection?
I don't know. I don't know what he was charged with.
Didn't you want to know that?
What do you mean?
Were you ever interested in knowing what Brandon Blackwell was in the Boone County Jail for?
He was in there for a violation of a protection order.
Okay. Was he, and that was the crime he was alleged to have been committed against Lenny?
I believe it was multiple
Multiple what?
violations.
Okay. Was he charged with any other crimes against Lenny?
I'm assuming so if you keep asking.
I would just like for you to answer the question, please.
Ask me the question and I will answer it.
Was Brandon Blackwell in the Boone County Jail for any charges in addition to violation of an order of protection?
I already said I do not know, but I assume so.
Would you please review those documents for me? What do those documents appear to be?
It's charging document.
For who?
Brandon Blackwell.
Okay. Does that appear to be an indictment against Brandon Blackwell?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything about that paperwork? Well, I'll withdraw the question, Your Honor. I would move what I've marked as defense D into evidence at this time.
Well, any objection?
Judge, I would object to the relevance.
What, let me see. Yes, Judge. Well, I'm going to reserve ruling on this at this time. You got further questions, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but that's your objection?
Well, Judge, I don't know if it's a certified copy or not. I haven't seen it other than it flashed it to me, and I don't need to see it, but assuming it is, again, the relevance, this is a witness who at the defense request has to be excluded and is not testifying.
Yeah.
Well, it's not statements. It's not his statement.
Well, but wait a minute. It may gain relevance depending on what other questions he's got. I'm going to reserve ruling on it at this time. Ask your question, counsel.
Okay. So you had said that you documented all the significant steps in your investigation. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you had a conversation with Brandon Blackwell's father while he was in jail on 114, correct?
Briefly, yeah, his father called me.
Mm-hmm. And as a result of that conversation, you went and saw Brandon Blackwell in the Boone County Jail.
Correct.
Was that a significant, was talking with Brandon Blackwell's father, would you consider that a significant event in the Renick investigation?
Talking to his father? No.
Okay. Now, do you know if, do you consider it relevant to know what Brandon, now, I'm going to suggest that you went to see Brandon Blackwell because you felt he had some information that might be useful to you, right?
Yes.
Do you think it's relevant for an investigator under those circumstances to know what a person like that who's in jail is actually in jail for?
Partially.
Okay. When you say it's partially relevant, do you mean that it is relevant or that it's not relevant?
I guess I don't know that it's really extremely relevant other than knowing that they're in jail. Like, I'm going to talk to him regardless, so I don't know that it's really relevant why he's in jail other than that he's in jail.
And that's why you don't know today all of the reasons he was in jail for.
Sure.
Now, when you met Brandon Blackwell in the Boone County Jail, he was in jail, correct?
Correct.
What was he wearing?
I have no idea. Probably orange. I don't know.
Okay. And you introduced yourself to him?
Yep.
And did you tell Brandon Blackwell that his father called you and reached out to you that he wanted to talk to you, Brandon?
Probably.
And did you tell Brandon that Brandon's father asked you or the prosecutor for leniency in his criminal charges against Lynlee if Brandon gave valuable information in the Renick homicide?
Yes.
And you told Brandon that before Brandon ever got into his story or statement to you, right?
Probably.
And then did you tell Brandon Blackwell that you talked to the prosecutor before you came to the Boone County Jail?
Probably.
Okay. Do you consider, and what would you have talked to the prosecutor about?
For something like this, we would talk to them and just say, hey, if we have a cooperating witness in a homicide, would you be interested in leniency with whatever charge they have?
Okay, and do you consider that a significant step in an investigation, that conversation with the prosecutor?
No, to my recollection, recollection, Brandon never even got the deal.
Okay. Well, do you know if his charges have been dismissed or he's pled to them?
I don't believe he has, or I don't believe they've been dismissed.
So they're still pending,
I believe so.
depending on what happens in this case.
I have no idea. You'd have to ask them.
Did you write a report documenting the conversation with the prosecutor?
You just asked me that. I said no.
Did you write a report? I may not have asked you this, but did you write a report on your conversation with Brandon's father before you went and saw him?
You asked me that as well. Yes. When I went and saw him, yes, I wrote a report on that.
I'm talking about Brandon's father.
Yes. When I went and saw Brandon's father, I wrote a report on talking to Brandon's father.
You did?
Yes, you just...
Okay. Okay, fair enough. All right. Now, did you tell Brandon Blackwell that his information could not be speculation, that he couldn't get a deal as long as his information was speculation?
I did. It had to be truthful. Yes.
Okay. Did you tell Brandon Blackwell that if Lynlee Renick goes to jail or prison, that there's no reason for him to have an ex parte? Or I'm sorry, did you tell Brandon Blackwell that if Lynlee Renick goes to jail or prison, that there's no reason for Lynlee Renick to have an ex parte against Brandon?
Probably. I mean, common sense would dictate that.
But you expressed that verbally to Brandon.
Yeah, probably.
Did you tell Brandon Blackwell that Brandon telling you half the story in the jail and the other half once he gets out of jail was not going to help him?
Yes, because that's what he wanted to do.
So, now, do you know how long the conversation was with Brandon Blackwell in the jail?
I have no idea.
Okay, if I were to say about 50 minutes, would that sound right?
Sure.
Now, are you aware of Brandon Blackwell having any injuries around that time?
I think he had like a TBI. I don't know how much prior to.
Okay. And can you tell the jury what a TBI is?
Traumatic brain injury.
Did you ask him any questions about the traumatic brain injury?
I don't believe I had to. I might have, but his parents had already told me about it. So.
And Brandon Blackwell, I'm sorry, I'll withdraw that question. After this conversation with Brandon Blackwell, did you ever, you're aware that in jail they record phone calls?
Yep.
And I think you downloaded or you were able to acquire Michael Humphrey's jail phone calls.
Probably.
Is that yes?
I believe so.
Okay. And you wrote a report on that, I think.
Probably so.
Okay. And you also downloaded Lynlee Renick's jail phone calls when she was in jail.
Correct.
Did you download Brandon Blackwell's jail phone calls?
I did not.
So you don't know what Brandon Blackwell ever said on his jail phone calls?
Correct.
So, if Brandon Blackwell were to say something on his jail phone calls, such as, it's a really good thing Lynlee confessed to me, I'll withdraw the
Question's been withdrawn.
I'll withdraw the question. Now, after that conversation, the very next thing you did after that conversation with Brandon Blackwell was you went and you detained Ashley Shaw.
I don't think that's right. I'm pretty sure I talked to Brandon twice.
When was the second time you talked to Brandon Blackwell?
I think I talked to Brandon, was the first time on the 14th maybe? I believe so.
If I were to tell you that you talked to Brandon Blackwell on the 16th, would that sound correct?
Yeah, but I think I talked to him prior to that too, did I not?
Well, did you write a report on it?
I would have.
Okay. But what's your answer? Did you talk to him? Well, let me ask this. Eventually you picked up Ashley Shaw and you detained her, right?
Correct.
And you detained her based on what Brandon Blackwell told you?
No.
Okay. Where was Ashley Shaw detained?
At her place of work in Columbia.
How much time had passed between talking to Brandon Blackwell and detaining Ashley Shaw?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, was it a day?
Hours, I would assume. I don't know.
You said hours?
I assume. I don't know. You have my report.
Okay, so your testimony is that hours after talking to Brandon Blackwell, and I'm asking for your memory, not what I have, but hours after interviewing Brandon Blackwell, you went and you detained Ashley Shaw. Is that your testimony?
Probably pretty close.
Okay. And you took Ashley Shaw somewhere, correct?
Correct.
And how did you get there?
In a car.
And you guys had a conversation in the car, right, with Ashley Shaw?
Correct.
And she described things that were going on in her life, correct?
Correct.
And one of the things on the way, and you didn't originally tell her why she was being detained, right?
In what? That's a vague question.
Sure, I'll make a more specific, I'll ask a more specific question. Did you tell Ashley Shaw, did Ashley Shaw, when you approached her vehicle, you approached her vehicle, right?
Correct.
She was inside of the car, I think you may have tapped on the window or got
Correct.
her attention.
Yep.
Did she, and what did she say when she got her attention?
I don't recall. I told her that we were there for the Ben Renick homicide, so she was aware of that.
Okay, what was the next thing she said?
I have no idea.
Okay, eventually she got in the car, right?
Correct.
And you read her Miranda rights.
Correct.
Why did you read her Miranda rights?
Because we asked her and we transported her, so at that point she's not free to go. So that's why we read her.
So I want to ask a little bit about the conversation you had with Ashley Shaw on the way to the station. Ashley Shaw told you that, and you hadn't talked to, when was the last time before this interview with Ashley Shaw you had talked to her? How long had it passed? How much time had passed since you last talked to Ashley Shaw?
I don't think I ever spoke to her.
Okay. And so did she tell you that she got a new job?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is an improper form of impeachment. I believe Ms. Shaw sat there and admitted that she said those things. So this is...
What did he just say a minute ago? Did he interview Ashley? This witness?
Are you asking?
I thought he said he didn't ever talk to her.
No, prior to.
He didn't interview her before this current interview that I'm questioning.
Oh, okay. Didn't talk to her before he talked to her. Okay,
Right.
I get it.
Okay.
Objections overruled.
Okay. So, Ashley Shaw told you that she got a job at Senior Benefit Services, right?
I believe so. That's where we picked her up.
And she also told you that she was trying to get her insurance license, right?
Probably.
And she told you that she was raising a child, right?
Probably.
And she told you that she got married recently, right?
I believe so.
And she told you that she was planning a honeymoon
Probably.
to Canada.
I have no idea where.
Now, did you ask her about how busy the spa was on the day of the homicide?
I don't recall.
I want you to read this document towards the end, towards the trooper.
Okay.
Okay, so does that help you remember what she, how busy she told you the spa was?
Yeah, I think she said they were fairly busy.
Fairly busy?
I didn't. You asked me to read my part, so that's what I was reading. I didn't read her part.
Didn't that? Now, when you got to the station, where did you take Ashley Shaw?
To the interview room.
Can you describe for the jury what an interview room is?
It's a room with cameras and seats in it where you interview people.
How large was this interview room?
I have no idea. I mean, probably like 8 by 8, 10 by 10. I'm not sure.
So fairly small?
I would say it's pretty decent size for an interview room.
Okay. Was the door open or closed when you talked to Ashley Shaw?
Closed so that you don't get background noise.
How many officers were in that interview room with Ashley Shaw?
2.
And did Ashley Shaw have an attorney at that time?
She did not.
Did you ask Ashley Shaw if she had anything to do, or if Lynlee had anything to do with Ben Renick's death?
I believe so.
And she said, do you know what her answer to that was?
I think she said she'd like to think no.
Okay. And then after that, you made a statement to her that caused her to change that statement, correct?
And I guess in what sense do you mean caused her?
Well, let's take it, let's do it this way. Ashley Shaw told you she didn't know if Lynlee Renick killed Ben, right?
She said she'd like to think she didn't.
Okay. Then you made a statement, correct?
Probably so.
At the conclusion of that statement, Ashley Shaw gave another statement at about 6 o'clock that night, correct?
You're jumping ahead a lot of the interview that was done that night. So there was an initial story that she gave, which was all a lie, and the original story.
My question, Trooper, is just simply, did her story change from, I don't know if I would like to think Lenny had nothing to do with Ben's death, to something different? That's all I'm asking, is if it changed.
It changed before, like that wasn't even, there's a whole statement in between there that you're skipping is what I'm saying. Her liking to believe not is not the statement that she gave prior to my statement.
Okay. I want to refer your attention, Trooper, to line 18, please. Line 18 and line 19, can you review those two lines to yourself?
18 and 19?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you guys were talking in words here, right?
Correct.
That's how we got it onto a transcript, correct?
Sure.
You say, do you think she had anything to do with his death? Is that true?
Correct.
And who is she that you were asking about?
Lynlee.
And did Shaw say, I would like to think not know?
Yes.
And what else did she say? It goes to line 24.
I don't know. I would like to think that I have better character judgment than that. I wouldn't work for someone or put myself or my child around somebody that would do something like that, but I don't know for sure. I wasn't there.
And that was spoken in the English language, correct?
Obviously.
Now, there's a page number at the bottom of this transcript. Can you tell me what that page number is?
18.
Okay. And 19 comes after 18, right?
No kidding.
Okay. So what I want you to do is look at the page number on that page.
Okay.
What page number is that?
19.
Okay. And what does Ashley Shaw say at the
makes sense? So I would like to say no, but I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. And then what do you say?
Okay.
Okay. And then, never had that after this? Okay. And you say okay on line 3, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then what does Ashley Shaw say on lines 4 and 5?
So that sounds really rude and bad. I don't know.
Okay. And then what do you say from lines 6 to 25? Would you read that to the jury, please?
Line 6. What line do you want?
6 to the bottom of the page.
Okay. Well, I'll just cut to the chase. Shaw says, yeah. I said, the reason we're here and the reason that you're here is you have been implicated in being part of Ben's death, and I want you to hear me out before you say anything. She says, okay. I said, we've talked to the prosecutor, okay? And the prosecutor is willing, if you are 100% honest, to give information in this homicide that helps us solve it. Basically, he's willing to work with you. Otherwise, you would be accessory to first-degree murder, and first-degree murder, accessory to, is the exact same charge as first-degree murder. So we're here because we have information that you helped plan and actually took part in an attempt on Ben's life before Ben was actually killed. So I just want to put that out there and go back and let you be 100% honest on what happened, because we know a lot of what happened. There are arrests going to be made, and then that ends the page.
Okay. What does it say on the following page, officer?
Today, people are going to jail for the first-degree murder. We've got the warrants typed up and ready to be sent out, so it's basically now is the time. You're either on Team Lynlee or you're on Team Missouri, and Team Lynlee is going to jail. They're going to prison for first-degree murder, so it's your opportunity. We're not here by surprise. You're here. We've got other people talking to other investigators, talking to other people, so that's where we're at right now. No more bullshit. The rubber meets the road. You have one opportunity, and it's right here, right now. As soon as we leave this room, if you don't tell us exactly what happened, you're not leaving. And she said, I need an attorney. You want to keep going?
No. Is this what you said to Ashley Shaw, Trooper?
Yep.
And what you meant was this, though, right?
No.
Are you familiar with a statute called witness tampering?
Yes.
What are the elements of witness tampering?
I don't know, but I'm sure you've got it.
One minute, Your Honor. Now, okay, I'm good. So you then, Ashley Shaw, after that, she said she needed an attorney. She was given an attorney, right?
Correct.
And she, at that point, accepted a proffer agreement, correct?
At what point?
Well, did she accept a proffer agreement at all that day?
That evening, yes.
Okay. After she signed that proffer agreement, did you, after she signed the proffer agreement, interview her?
I'm not sure if she signed it before or after. It was between her and the prosecuting attorney.
And I think in that interview you said that the proffer agreement no longer applies if you don't tell the truth, right?
Well, that's actually written on the proffer agreement.
Okay. But do you say that verbally in the interview?
Probably so, yeah.
So that would seem to suggest that she accepted the proffer agreement before the interview that you had with her that evening.
Sure.
Okay.
Now, I want to show you a report that you wrote. You wrote a report about that conversation, that Team Missouri conversation. Did you not?
Probably so.
Okay. Is that the report that you wrote on that conversation?
Sure.
And did you document what you said to Ashley Shaw on that report?
It's a synopsis of what was said.
Okay. And you refer to that statement that you told her in that report. Do you not?
Point it out to me, what paragraph?
I'm going to refer your attention to paragraph 7. I've underlined it.
How did you document your statement to Ashley Shaw?
It says, I told Shaw the people involved in Benjamin's murder would be going to jail by the end of the day, and this is her opportunity to tell the truth in regards to what happened to Benjamin.
Is that it?
That I wrote for mine, yes.
Do you think that that is a fair
depiction of this statement?
I would say yes.
Okay. Would you tell it to the jury, please?
That's a fair depiction of that statement.
Now, you said a couple of times that you talked to the prosecutor about this case.
Which prosecutor, which part of the case?
Well, after
I can't hear you when you turn away, sir.
did you ever write a report at all about your conversation with any prosecutor about this case?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Are you supposed to write a report to a prosecuting, whenever you talk to a prosecuting attorney?
Not typically.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a document. Would you please review that document?
Okay.
Have you reviewed it?
Yep.
Can I see it, please? Does this document not say officers report to prosecuting attorney?
It does.
And it's completely blank, isn't it?
Well, okay, so
I'm asking you, is there any writing on this document?
I will answer your question if you allow me to explain what that document actually is.
Well, let him try to do that if he wants to on redirect. Just answer the question. Is there any writing on there?
Yes.
Okay, next question.
I have just a couple more questions. You showed a slide on direct examination, I think. Is that true, Trooper?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, do you remember back when Mr. Zollner asked you some questions when he questioned you?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember that?
I don't know what you're asking, is what I'm saying.
My question is, do you remember testifying on direct examination when Mr. Zollner asked you questions?
Yes.
And I think you testified about messages that were sent between Lynlee and Ben.
Correct. Do those appear to be Facebook messages between Lynlee and Ben? Yes.
Okay. There's a highlighted portion there. Would you read that to the jury, please?
I'm sorry those nights happened. They shouldn't have, never will again. I wasn't mad at you for not having sex with me, but it doesn't matter because I made you feel that way. I'm sorry.
Would you read it a little bit slower so I can understand it, please?
I'm sorry those nights happened. They shouldn't have, never will again. I wasn't mad at you for not having sex with me, but it doesn't matter because I made you feel that way. I'm sorry.
Do you know what that's been? And who appears to have written that?
Let me see. Ben would be my assumption. Yep.
Okay, do you know what he's referring to? What he's sorry for?
Yep.
What is he sorry for?
Her accusing him of raping her.
Doesn't that appear like he's apologizing for doing that?
It appears that he apologizes for making her feel that way.
Okay. I'm going to hand you another set of documents, Trooper. Do those appear to be Facebook messages as well?
They are.
There's a highlighted portion on there. Who sent that message?
Lynlee.
And what does she say in that message, Trooper?
Should we call it quits with the spa? I'm not angry.
Say that again.
I can't. Could you please speak slower? I cannot understand a word you're saying.
Should we call it quits with the spa? I'm not angry or being sarcastic. I'm legitimately asking. I understand very much the reality of this and honestly want to know what we need to do.
So Lynlee was willing to close the spa, right?
They're discussing it, yes.
Is that relevant to your investigation at all, Trooper?
Partially.
Did you ever seen that before?
Yes.
Did you include that in the litany of messages we saw this morning?
There was a bunch of messages not included.
Was it included or not?
No.
No?
No.
Why not?
I don't know why.
Is the answer, Trooper, because you don't care about both sides? You just care about the evidence that helps you convict somebody and get an arrest in a case? Is that the answer?
The answer is you have it because I have it. I'm not the one who puts on the prosecution.
I have no further questions.
Well, you're going to reoffer D.
Yes.
And I'm going to overrule the objection. D's admitted. Now, did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
Absolutely, Your Honor. Tell the jury what that document is.
It's basically the charges or indictment of Brandon Blackwell, things that he is being charged with awaiting trial for.
Count one. What's count one?
Violation of an order of protection.
Count two.
Violation of an order of protection.
I'm sorry, what date was the first count of violation of an order of protection?
October 4th, 2019.
Okay, what's count two?
October 23rd, 2019.
What's count three?
Violation of an order of protection, October 24th.
What are we on? What's count four?
Stalking.
What kind of stalking?
Class C felony stalking.
What degree of stalking?
I just said it. Class E felony of stalking. Oh, first degree.
Okay, and read what he's particularly accused of doing in that count.
sending text messages stating he was out back, text message to come outside, or he was about to come inside. I think that's it.
So he sent a message saying, I'm out back and I'm about to come inside.
Sure.
Okay. What's the next count? What are we up to? What number is that?
5.
Okay, what's count 5?
Violation of an order of protection.
Okay, what's the date for that?
November 27th.
And then what's the next count?
Violation of an order of protection, December 9th.
What count is that?
6.
Okay. And what are we up to now? 7?
Correct.
Okay, what's 7?
Another stalking.
Okay, what kind of stalking?
Exact same one as the first.
Would you just tell me what degree of stalking it is?
First degree.
Okay. And how much prison time how much time in prison can a person get for first degree stalking?
You'd have to ask a prosecutor. I don't know.
Okay. And these were the charges that Brandon Blackwell wanted leniency for, is that correct?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
I'm going to give you a hard time about a couple mistakes or things I think you got a little bit wrong.
Okay.
Remember a moment ago you said, Mr. Hessman said, well, why wasn't that slide, why wasn't that in that material?
Correct.
I showed, we used PowerPoint number 99, correct?
Correct.
And this, we didn't go through every slide, did we?
No.
And this isn't even every textbook. I mean, there's thousands more.
Correct.
And when we went through this, your job is to answer questions I might ask.
Correct.
Okay, and so slide 19, I'd like you to look at that and
See if Mr. Hessman's anger at you about not asking something or providing something is a little misplaced, and you should direct that to me because the evidence was right there in front of him.
Correct.
So that information is in there.
Correct.
One other thing I just wanted to ask you about, going way back when you first started answering questions, remember this discussion about the $1 million life insurance policy?
Yes, sir.
You actually wrote a summary about, based on something else you had seen, about how you thought that life insurance was being handled.
Yes, sir.
You didn't actually investigate the life insurance policy.
No.
I got 2 stacks that, I don't know if you can see these. This is all the information financial from Renaissance Financial. You didn't obtain this.
Correct.
But you know it has to do with the life insurance policy.
Correct.
And you're not giving you a hard time, but you're not an estate attorney.
Correct.
You don't know how wills and trusts work, you're just kind of giving your basic thoughts.
Correct.
But if we wanted to know if that $1 million was part of the trust or was going to be paid directly to the defendant upon her husband's death, you're aware there's a lady sitting right down the hallway that's going to come in here after the next witness.
Correct.
And she'll answer that question for Mr. Hessman.
Correct.
We don't have any other questions?
Recall.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be finally excused?
He may be subject to recall, Your Honor.
You step down, you're subject to be recalled. Thank you so much. Call your next witness.
Jason Crafton.